As an evidence-based decision maker, you're probably spending a lot of time trying to find the right programs and practices to use in your classrooms. In this video, I'm going to share with you the Works Clearinghouse, a federally funded database that houses tons of useful information about both evidence-based practices and programs that you can use to promote school improvement in your school. Hi friends, I'm Matthew Courtney, and I help schools help kids. And on this channel, we talk all about evidence-informed school improvement. So if you're into that, hit subscribe and come be a part of our community of improvers. All right, let's get right into it with the Works Clearinghouse. What you see here on your screen is the Works Clearinghouse homepage. Works Clearinghouse is a division of the Institute for Education Sciences at the U.S. Department of Education. And they have a whole team of both staff and volunteers who work to go through the literature and come up with systematic reviews that help us as practitioners understand what kinds of practices and programs are going to work best in our schools. Here on the homepage, you can see the 4 key products that the Works Clearinghouse produces: practice guides, intervention reports, reviews from individual studies, and data from study reviews. For this tutorial today, we're going to focus only on practice guides and intervention reports because as a practitioner in the field, these are the 2 products that you're going to use most frequently as you're trying to make evidence-based decisions for your school. Let's start with practice guides. Here on the practice guide landing page, you can see that there are 29 practice guides created by the Works Clearinghouse at this point. They're always creating new things and working through new processes. Each of these practice guides is a systematic review of the literature about a very specific theme. Remember that a systematic review is a type of literature review in which the researchers go in and they try to find all of the relevant information about a topic, and then they synthesize that information together into new information that us practitioners can use as we make decisions. A few key things about this page as you start to navigate it. First, you'll see that there are 4 headings that cluster these findings together. First, we have product type. These are all going to be practice guides because that's the button that I clicked. Grade level, so we can sort and filter these by grade level if we're working in a middle school, a high school, an elementary school, or maybe you're a central office staff person trying to support all grade levels. Highest evidence tier. This aligns with the Every Student Succeeds Act evidence-based practice definition. I have another video on that if that's something that's new to you, but probably not by this point. Those have been around for a while. Each of these shows us the highest evidence tier within the systematic review, and it's important that we understand that probably each of these systematic reviews is going to contain evidence from all 4 tiers. We're also going to see the name and release date for each of our documents. Here on the left-hand side, we have some filters, so we can filter by publication date, by topic, by population, by grade level, and by that evidence tier. So this is really helpful if you are just kind of browsing and you want to filter down really quickly. You can do that pretty easily with these filters on the side. Now I'm just going to pick this Providing Reading Interventions practice guide for us to look at the landing page for an individual practice guide. So here you can see this is the practice guide landing page for Providing Reading Interventions for students in grades 4 through 9. We have some excellent summary information. This makes it really fast for a practitioner to kind of take that information in, allow that information to inform their decision-making process. We also see over here the release date. We have the introduction document, a summary document, as well as the full document. If you're really trying to make a well-informed decision for your school, I highly recommend that you consider that full guide and download and read the full systematic review before you begin to implement. But the rest of the information on this page can help us know what to expect in that full guide and save us some reading time if we decide that maybe we don't want to read the whole guide or don't think it's appropriate for us. As we scroll down, we'll see that there are 4 recommendations housed in this guide. Some guides have 2 or 3 recommendations, some have 6 or 7 recommendations. It just depends on what that systematic review of the literature showed the researchers who prepared it. So for each of these, we can click Show More and see a little bit more detail about the recommendation. So this recommendation here is to build student decoding skills so they can read complex multisyllabic words. This is supported by strong evidence, that Tier 1 evidence in the ESSA framework. And we can click this link to download a PDF that is just about this individual practice guide. We can see each of these recommendations has their own Show More with their own PDF. We can look at the Details tab to get a little more information about what kind of literature was accessed as the reviewers went through and established this systematic review. So we can see that this covers the topics of literacy and children and youth with disabilities. These are hyperlinks, so they'll take us to other research and other reviews on those topics. We can also see it's grades 4 through 9, and we can click any one of those if we want to filter down and see practice guides that focus on just one grade level. And we can see that the audience for this practice guide is administrators, parents and families, school specialists, and teachers. We also see some other information here about how staff contributed and some of the processes that they used. If we click on panel, we can see the team of researchers who worked together to actually assemble this guide. So this is really helpful. I love how the Works Clearinghouse has made great strides in the last few years to become more and more transparent with how they do their process and do their reviews. In some of my other videos, I talk about other databases and clearinghouses that are not as transparent. So transparency, I think, is really key to being an effective evidence-based practitioner. And then you'll also see some related resources. So here they've done a webinar on this, so you can go and watch a webinar. And then this is another practice guide. This is a slide deck that kind of goes along with that. So you can access both of those resources as well. I'm going to open this full guide so we can take a look at what's actually inside a practice guide. So here we can see the full PDF document that goes along with this practice guide. You can see that it is 204 pages. So these practice guides are hyper detailed. They are a thorough systematic review. And so if you're really working on reading interventions in grades 4 through 9, this is a great starting document to really help you get your feet under you on what the literature really says about reading interventions. We can scroll down quickly through the side. We can see again, here's the panel and the staff information. This one's relatively young at the time of this recording. Back in March 2022 is when it was released. We have some front matter information, and then we have a detailed table of contents. And so this is really helpful because we can use this table of contents to navigate our way through the practice guide itself. We can pick a recommendation by clicking in that table of contents. It's going to jump directly to a recommendation. And here we can see all the information that the researchers found about this recommendation. I also love that as you go through, things like appendices are also highlighted and hyperlinked, so you can jump directly to a hyperlink at any point. This is a great one to have clicked on kind of randomly because this is all about the rationale for evidence ratings, and that's a part that I find trips a lot of evidence-based practitioners up when they're trying to think about those ESSA ratings for their various pieces of research and practice. We can go back to the table of contents and again, click through any of these. I also love that they have broken some of these recommendations down. So you can see recommendation 3 has a part A, B, C, and D, as well as a summary. So again, that's going to help me as a practitioner really to navigate that research a little more effectively. So I highly recommend that you take time to download a full guide before making any decisions. So that's a brief introduction into the practice guide side of the Works Clearinghouse. I'm going to go back up to the top and redirect to the home page. And this time I want to show you intervention reports. So I'm going to click down here this second next to this sort of maroon box here, intervention reports. So here we can see the landing page for our intervention reports. And you can see right off the bat, there are 231 intervention reports, many, many more than there are in practice guides. And that's because this was the sort of original charge of the Works Clearinghouse, was to help schools and districts make better informed choices about the products and the curriculum that they're purchasing. So this is really where they started. This is sort of the bread and butter of the Works Clearinghouse. And over time, they've evolved to add practice guides. And we're starting to see more and more practice guides come out from the Works Clearinghouse. And so that to me is very promising. You'll see here that this landing page looks exactly the same as the landing page for practice guides. We have, again, our 4 columns across the top: product type, grade level, highest tier of evidence, as well as the name and release date. We also have all of these filters here on the side. One filter that I think is really important here is locale, rural, suburban, and urban. It's always really important when we're picking an intervention or a curriculum and where we're trying to make an evidence-based decision that we're looking at research that was conducted on kids like ours and in schools like ours. And so that filter really helps us to do that effectively. I'm just going to scroll down here and pick a random one. Let's look at Literacy Express. This is the landing page for Literacy Express. This is an intervention, a named intervention that the Works Clearinghouse has studied. And they have, again, done that systematic review of the literature to help us as practitioners understand how to best use this product. This page is what they call an evidence snapshot, and that's exactly what it is. It's going to give me a brief summary of all the information they found. If I want to read the full report, I'm going to click Download Intervention Report, and we'll do that here in just a second so you can see what that looks like. As I scroll down, I see that we have an overall takeaway for Literacy Express. We also have a brief summary of what Literacy Express is. In our findings tab, we see that 3 studies met the standards of the What Works Clearinghouse out of 4 eligible studies to review. So there's only 3 studies that support the use of Literacy Express with our kiddos, but that's okay. We have to work with what we've got, and so let's see what kind of information we find. In this table, we get again another summary. We see the outcome domains that are identified by the What Works Clearinghouse, an effectiveness rating, the grade levels, and the evidence tiers. It's important to know that this effectiveness rating, this is a What Works Clearinghouse generated outcome. And so we can see that in cognition and general mathematics achievement, these have an effectiveness rating of 0. Mathematics isn't really surprising considering this is a literacy intervention. We also see that there's no tiers assigned, which means none of the literature that they reviewed aligned to those ESSA evidence tiers. We do see some positive outcomes from Tier 1 evidence related to oral language. So if I'm trying to expand oral language abilities in my pre-K students, this might be an effective strategy to use. We also see some positive outcomes in phonological processing and print knowledge, but no tiers assigned, which makes me question a little bit the rigor of the research that was used to make these determinations. One of the things I really like about this is this effectiveness rating is really pretty clear for us to see. In this case, we see a clear 0. There's no evidence of effectiveness. Here we've got these 2 plus signs. Pretty good effectiveness according to the literature on these 3 outcomes. So I like that. I think that's very user-friendly and easy to understand. Also here on the side, we have some other summary information. So first we can look at the students and the population who this intervention in this research was conducted with. We see this was 57% Black students, 13% white students, and 1% other or unknown race. We also see ethnicity, so 36% of the students who engaged in this research were Hispanic, 64% were not Hispanic or Latino. 52% male, 48% female, pretty even divide here. 100% English learners, so that's important information for me to know. If I'm trying to improve outcomes for my English learners, this is a good place to start. If I'm trying to improve outcomes for maybe pre-K students who are developmentally delayed, this might not be as effective for them because it wasn't studied using those developmentally delayed students. And so this is useful information for me. Delivery method, we see that this was both small group and whole class delivery. We see that this was conducted in urban settings. So if I'm in a rural setting, that might give me some pause. I might need to ask some other questions as I vet and evaluate this piece of evidence. And then we see that it was conducted in California and Florida. So if I'm living in Idaho, I might have some questions about whether or not the population of students in California and Florida look like my population of students in Idaho. That's not to say that this intervention would not work for English learners in Idaho in a rural setting, but it is a question that I need to ask as an evidence-based practitioner as I prepare to make my decision. Here at the top, I'm going to download this intervention report again so you can see what it looks like. You can see that these are much more straight and to the point than the systematic reviews we looked at earlier because they're really much more narrow. When you're looking at a systematic review about a teaching practice, there could be hundreds and hundreds of articles about a teaching practice. But as we've already seen, there's only 4 articles related to Literacy Express. And so what was a 200-page document in the previous demonstration is now only a 47-page document. We see a program description, we see an overview of the research, and some notes here about the individual pieces of research that we've seen. As we scroll down, we can see some really good breakouts of the different pieces that they're looking for. We see our 3 positive effects that we saw on the summary page. We also see no discernible effects for cognition and math. Again, we saw that on the last page. And as we scroll down, we can see some more details of the research. I love that these include cost analysis. Cost is always really important. One of the things I always say when we're making evidence-informed decisions is that cost is part of our evidence. If we can't afford to fully implement a program, then it's better that we implement another program that we can afford to fully implement, to do it right with fidelity, instead of to get a more impressive program that we can't afford to do right, because then we're not going to see the results that we want to see. It then goes into a detailed explanation of the research. And so I like this too. You can really get in and read about the research findings and gain a deeper understanding of what to expect if you were to use this intervention with your students. Now, one of the weaknesses of these, as you can see here, this was from July 2010, so it's pretty old. It is very likely in the last 13 years that more research on Literacy Express has been conducted. That is, of course, not reflected here. So as an evidence-based decision maker, you're going to have to think about that, and you're going to have to really decide, ask some hard questions, do some of your own research to kind of line up with this document. You don't want to use this as your sole decision-making source because it's pretty old. I also don't love that it lacks a table of contents like the intervention reports do, and so that makes it a little harder to navigate. But these are still excellent starting points if you are trying to adopt a new curriculum, adopt a new intervention or program for your school. Back here on the home page, we do have 2 more options: reviews of individual studies and data from study reviews. I'm not going to talk about those in this video because it's getting a little long here today, but this is some useful information if you're a researcher or if you're an evidence-based practitioner who's really trying to dig deeper in their understanding of and application of research. And so if you'd like to see a video about those other 2 options, let me know in the comments below and I'll add it to the queue. I also love here on the homepage what's new at Works Clearinghouse. They're always putting out new resources. They're always putting out webinars and other activities for you to engage in to help you build your skills as an evidence-based decision maker. I also love here on the homepage that they have very transparent instruction on how they review studies. And so I would highly, highly encourage you, especially if you're a principal, if you're a central office staff person and you're trying to help make those hard decisions, really review those study protocols, those review protocols, because that can help you create your own review protocols back in your home setting. All right, well, that brings us to the end of our video today, friends. Listen, if you found value out of this video, hit subscribe, come be a part of our community of improvers and learn along with us, and make sure you check out another video on my channel before you leave today. See you next time.